Certain topics seem to lend themselves to be more prominent in people's thinking or discussion at certain times of year, and this is definitely one of those. I'm going to be looking and talking about how people deal with poor body odor and what they associate poor or unpleasant body odor with. Um, it's a hot topic, and no pun intended, and I think largely people have misunderstood the role of sweating and also what poor body odor represents within the body, the sign that it's giving you as an individual. Sweating itself is odorless. I don't know how many of you are aware of that, but sweat doesn't actually have a smell. It's only when that sweat reaches the skin surface and meets the bacteria on the skin does any kind of smell come about through the breakdown of the sweat with the bacteria. Even then, the smell should be a natural earthy smell, typically known as your body odor. That's nothing to be ashamed of or to try and mask. That it should perfectly normal, and as I said, it should be a pleasant one. It's only when the body is mismanaged to a large extent does that breakdown of sweat with bacteria cause an unpleasant body odor as a result. And it's that I really want to look at today. I'd like to make a point of saying I'm not looking at personal hygiene as a factor here. I'm taking it as a given that people understand the role of personal hygiene, showering regularly, etc., in keeping a body free from poor body odor. So I just wanted to make that clear. It may seem like an obvious thing to say, but this is not a video about that. So what does sweating do? Let's have a look at that. I think it would be a safe assumption to make that most people are aware that sweating's primary function is to regulate body temperature, and clearly during the hotter months people tend to sweat more for that very reason, trying to keep the core temperature constant in the hotter environments that we're in. As I've said, I think people seem to think that sweating in itself, or greater volumes of sweating as a natural bodily function, is a cause for concern or a problem or something to be frowned upon or even eradicated. And I really want to drive home that that isn't the way you should be looking at sweat. You certainly shouldn't be afraid of sweating in itself. It's more this second role or process of sweating that is what we need to address and look at in more detail, and that is sweating as a form of detoxification. The body as a whole has to detoxify itself on a daily level, whether it's through stuff coming into the body or through the byproducts of biochemical reactions that are going on within the body all the time. Detoxification is normal, it's what the body does, but it's only when that level of toxicity becomes greater than the body's ability to deal with it does it become a burden. And that is when sweating will be used as a form of detoxification. The skin is the largest organ in the body. It is also completely porous, as we all know, through sweating. So it lends itself with those attributes to being a good form of detoxification in terms of a pathway. But as I've said, it's not a preferred choice. The body has other organs to deal with that, reiterating the fact that only when it gets to a point when those organs can't meet the demands being placed on them does the body then look at using sweat as a form of detoxification. And in such a situation, toxins will literally be dumped out of the body through sweat, and that should give you an idea of where some of the poor body odor would come from. When that toxic burden is being released through sweat, and that very sweat is being broken down by bacteria, that can only lead to one thing, and that is a poor smell, a foul smell. It's not going to be a pleasant smell when you're dealing with breaking down toxins on the skin surface. So just what causes the toxic burden to be that great that the skin has to be used as a form of detoxification? Quite simply and quite commonly, it is what we're putting into our body, and none more so than the foods we eat. It's clearly something we do on a daily basis, and several times a day at that. So it can, if not done correctly and with the right types of food, can be a problem, can be the primary source of toxic burden to the body. And that typically will come from eating poor quality foods and or non-foods, so foods that aren't even foods altogether. And I've discussed what a non-food is in previous videos and on my website in the articles that I've written, so I don't really want to spend time talking too much about what a non-food is. I'll just put it in a nutshell and say a non-food is something that to some degree or another is reliant upon mechanical processing, so it's not found in its natural form in the environment. Something has to be done to it to give you the end product, and if those mechanical processing methods were stopped, you wouldn't see those on your shelves. So that's non-food in a nutshell. So essentially, the toxic burden from the food you eat can come from eating non-foods, not real food in the first place, or really poor quality foods, which in themselves will have a toxic load of perhaps chemicals, pesticides, etc., from farming practices that are commonly used with poor quality foods. So those foods that come in that aren't optimal to you for you do two things. One is the breakdown of those foods in themselves, through their very nature of being toxic to the body, will create an unpleasant smell. And obviously when that's expelled through the sweat, will lead to the same scenario as I've already outlined, how breaking down with the bacteria can give off that pungent smell. So that's directly impacted by the foods that you're consuming and how they're broken down. But more indirectly are what those poor quality foods or non-foods do to your digestive system. They will impair and hamper their ability to function, causing intolerances and inflammations to the system, to your gut function, and your ability to digest, assimilate and eliminate those very foods. So on one hand, you've got the direct toxic breakdown of those foods causing issues with poor body odour as they're expelled through sweat, and on the other hand you've got the same foods hampering the digestive function of the system. So what happens is, I liken this to rubbish or garbage being left out on the street. To any degree, 1, 2, 3 weeks goes by and that rubbish is not removed, those foods will begin to rot, break down, decompose, and give off an awful stench. And with a digestive system that's hampered, you're largely getting the same kind of goings on. Those foods are partially digested, partially eliminated. They remain in the system, rotting, giving off an awful stench in themselves, forming a breeding ground for bacteria, fungal, parasite infections. These kind of environments can clearly create a real toxic burden that is then having to be expelled through sweat, and again only leading to a body odour that is largely unpleasant, pungent, and not something that is normal or natural. It can be quite normal in society, but it's certainly not natural. That's not even touching on the health implications of having those poor quality foods hampering your digestive function. Health and vitality will be diminished or limited by the impairment of the digestive system, and as a result will limit your capabilities to lose weight, because as I've always said, it takes health, vitality and energy to allow the body to go through the processes of losing weight. So tying it around full circle, if you're dealing with poor body odour, look at it as a sign of internal dysfunction, not optimal well-being, not optimal vitality within you, and as a result of that, if your goal is to lose weight, you're at least going to be hampering your ability to do so. So rather than thinking that body odour, unpleasant body odour is an external issue to be dealt with by products, roll-ons, sprays, etc., take the message to mean something a little deeper. Look at what you can do to change the internal environment, so eating better quality foods and cutting out the non-foods, because I can guarantee you that a body that's subjected to good quality foods, clean foods, can't have those same negative problems that I've just outlined. It just won't be the case. And obviously if the internal environment's healthy, then the body doesn't have to use sweat as a form of detoxification, because it's not being overburdened with toxins in the first place. So yeah, I advise you to, if you are struggling with dealing with body odour, to take a deeper look at things and not vilify or be afraid of sweat. Sweat is very vital. It's a very natural and important process. Look at the deeper meaning and the deeper understanding behind that, and fundamentally how that could be impacting your weight loss. I'm David Shah. This is Weight Loss Exposure. Thanks for watching.